Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for 7 on Sunday. So I forgot to check before we went on our little vacation on the topics and film some of them for October, the ones I wanted to do, and there were a few I could do. And I could probably do like a separate video, and that way I don't have to pick 7. I can pick more than 7. But I figured I would jump on doing this week's topic, which is right before Halloween, the night before Halloween. And of course, the topic is dark and creepy reads. And I made sure that I avoided sharing Stephen King reads and just share other dark and creepy reads. Although there is one that's Stephen King adjacent. Because I've been trying this year, I have been trying to explore other horror authors. It's a little harder for me to do. Like movies, it's easy, but with like horror as a book is a little harder because I'm a little more picky. But I have some here. But I do have some here, and there's even a few that I didn't include that I was thinking about that I could have included. But I made my limit to, I got up to 7 after I thought about them. So, okay, so you guys know the drill. I share the books. And talk about them. So the first one, and this is no particular order. So the first dark and creepy read that I'm going to talk about, let me put these down, is Nosferatu, and I say it's Stephen King adjacent because it's written by his son Joe Hill. This was so great, and a very long book. I read it I finally finished it at the end of last year, because I started it a couple years ago. I borrowed it from the library, and then I finally got around to actually purchasing because I did really enjoy it and wanted to continue with it. But it's a super long book. Unfortunately, my edition got a little waterlogged, got a little water on it, and it's falling apart. I meant to tape this. I need to put more tape on this. But this is based as to our main character is Victoria McQueen. And she has a special ability that she can easily find things. Particularly with the help of her bike that can take her, will take her across a bridge to the very location where that item is lost. So even if it's been it was lost in some place far away, she, with the help of her bike and crossing the bridge, will find it. And one day, after being warned by another friend who also has a special gift, she finds herself crossing paths with this serial killer named Charlie Minx. Or I guess he's not a serial killer. He's more of a kidnapper. He kidnaps the kids that he feels like are being treated badly by their parents and takes them to Christmas land. And his car sucks the life out of these kids and turns them into vampire-like creatures. So it's very much like he's like a vampire in a way, except for he doesn't suck the your throat, suck the blood out of your system. But he's immortal, and he does basically suck out the life force of these children. And he has an assistant named Bing Partridge, he has him do whatever he wants to the parents to get them out of the way. And I'm sure you can guess what he does, using his gingerbread gas to drug them and make them compliant. So when Vic finds herself in his clutches, she tries to help his latest victim at the time escape, but it's too late for the little boy, and Charlie ends up chasing her out of his house, or he chases her down. She escapes his house and is rescued by this guy who's a little bit older than her. She's like mid-teens, I think, or late teens. She's rescued by this guy, named, it doesn't say his name, the guy that, but she's rescued by this guy who's kind of a nerd, and he's really sweet. He's the teddy bear. And they end up having a kid. And, as an adult, after that whole trauma of escaping Charlie and what happens right after she escapes when Charlie almost catches her, and something, like, really bad happens to someone else, she, puts that memory in the back of her mind, but she's constantly being haunted by the phone calls of Charlie's children, and Charlie is in a coma, and there's always that threat that he might wake up and return to come get her and seek revenge on Victoria. This was so good and so much fun, and, like, I know there are a lot of people who prefer shorter horror books, but I kind of like them when they're long, because it's more terrifying when you spend more time. Like, it's almost like you can't escape. And I mean, you could DNF the book, but you know what I mean, or at least I think you guys know what I mean. And it's fun. I love the characters. It's, and I like the idea of mixing something that's supposed to be fun and joyful and turn it into a horror, like Christmas. And I mean, kind of like, why people probably like the Krampus. And now he twists the current, the Santa Claus myth into something a little more sinister. And I really like that this character, that they turn the idea of Christmas into something absolutely terrifying. And, like, I really, I like all the characters. And I gotta say, like, I expected Manx to be such a sinister monster because he is less than human now. I expect him to be like that. But Bing Partridge was much more terrifying because he's still a human and has human emotions, and thinks like a human. Yet he has such a dirty, disturbing mind, and he's like a child that never grew up. Like, there's one point where Charlie is like, "You disappointed me, I'm gonna get rid of you," and Bing is just crying on the road and be like, "No, Mr. Manx," and it's kind of pathetic, actually. And he's a character that he's so evil, but at the same time, I kind of pitied him. And as I said before, I feel like you can pity without approving of their actions, and without liking them. You can still feel sorry for them and be like, you could have been a better person if you had made different choices, or if something in your life had been different. And it was so creepy, especially his parts when he would take the parents and what he would do to them. And he just, like, and it's also, like, I like it when stories, when the gifts are, like, small little things, like, showing that little bit of a supernatural element. I mean, of course, this is a very supernatural book because of the bad guy, or Charlie Manx himself, but, which makes me wonder how I feel about magical realism. I feel like it depends. That, like, the magical realism, it depends on something, And I like how it's kind of, like I said, Charlie Manx is kind of very vampiric, so it has a different take on vampires. And I like that he, well, actually, I shouldn't say I like this, but it's interesting that he goes after children and is like, your parents don't treat you very nice. They, are mean to you, so I'm gonna do you a favor and take you to my world. And there is a series, I've noticed there's a lot of series on AMC that I'm interested in, but I can't watch them right now unless they're, like, on Netflix or something. Like, I feel like I'm watching a lot more stuff on AMC, and AMC, of course, now has its own streaming network, but it's just another streaming network that I have to buy, and I'm not going to do that. Or I should say, technically, my mom has to buy. I am paying for HBO Max though, so. But this is. I also like that the play on Nosferatu on Charlie's license plate. And like his own seeming like Joe Hill's father, he really helps you get to know the characters, and I think it's even more terrifying when you're inside their heads. And I do at one point want to read more by Joe Hill. I just don't know what of his books that I want to read. I did attempt Heart-Shaped Box. I think I need to give that one another shot. But yes, this was so great, so twisted and fun, and so that is Nosferatu by Joe Hill. Okay, so the next one is another one I read last year. And that is Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. So this is a story about this woman and her little son Christopher, and they have just escaped her abusive boyfriend. She's found a way to escape him, and she takes him to Middle America. I can't remember if it says where. In Pennsylvania, she takes him. They move to Pennsylvania. And they start to build a life for themselves. And then one day, Christopher gets lost in the woods near their house. And he is missing for 6 days. But all of a sudden, he shows up. And he's a little different. And he also is somehow doing a lot better in school. He's in subjects that he wasn't as good at and couldn't comprehend. He all of a sudden is understanding them better. And he also has he's got some gifts now. He can touch people and see inside their heads and see what's going on with their lives. He leaves burn marks on people. And he also has someone he calls his imaginary friend, this invisible man that follows him around and helps him out. And he tells him that I need you and your friends to build a treehouse in the woods by Christmas. But they can't tell anyone. And he's also warned by this invisible friend that there is this woman, this creepy lady, who's going to come after him and try to stop him. So it's the story of good versus evil. It also, one of the things I love that's explored in horror. There's another book I read last year. It was either last year or earlier this year. I cannot remember what it's called, but I had 2 books, that book and another book with the same title. I cannot remember what it was, but The Ghost Tree. I cannot remember the author though. There's two ghost books. They're called The Ghost Tree. I cannot remember the author's name, but it takes place in a small town like this story, and also deals kind of with religion and spiritualism. And I like when horror talks about that and how religion can get people can get a little crazy, and justify their actions by saying, oh, God wanted me to do this, which is a bunch of crap, in my opinion. But it's also interesting to read about and just seeing how people get so obsessed. And we have one character in this book, this teenage girl who's told that she has to be good and pure, and she can't, and has to get good grades, get into a good school, and she has to be and she becomes obsessed with being a good girl. And of course, she's a teenage girl with hormones, and she has a boyfriend who's, this cute boyfriend, and she wants to go out and hang out with her friends. And, even if she's, a few minutes late coming home, her parents are going to get mad at her. And it's not even, I don't even get the impression that they're worried about her. I mean, maybe there are a little, because they're still her parents. But I think it's also more about, you did something naughty. You were bad. You broke our rules, and now we're gonna have to punish you. Which, yeah, I mean, but I mean, as in, like, it's not that they're worried about her or they're trying to, it's more they're trying to control her. And during this where she breaks down, and throughout this whole book, all these people seem to be hearing a voice. All the people in this town are hearing this one voice in their head, telling them, "You should do this. If you want to get to heaven, you need to do this. And if you're gonna do it this way, then you're wrong. You're gonna go to hell." Like Christopher's mother, who I love that Christopher's mom plays a bigger role in this. Like, and maybe because it's not YA. But a lot of teen books, the parents seem to disappear. They're not involved, or they don't care, or they're overprotective. And to the point of, like, even other adults reading can be like, really? It's like, you need to calm down. You don't. But I like how she's involved in this, and she hears the voice and questioning her being a mom. And it's, it's heartbreaking to see her struggle to be a single parent now and trying to protect her son, but not wanting to control him, not wanting to prevent him from having fun, having a normal childhood. So we get her perspective, and we get a lot of crazy people, and we get bullying in the story, and we have, of course, the story with the, the creepy woods, which I really like. I like that, we're in the, there's a creepy, mysterious woods area that, and there's a little bit of science fiction element with the, like, going to another dimension. And it's really fun and, creepy. Again, it's a longer one, but I actually like it longer because I like spending more time with the characters and getting to know them slowly, like really slowly building up. But not in a way that's boring. At least not for me. Now, other people might find this boring. I don't know. I don't remember what other people said about this book. But I loved it. Along with the other one I mentioned, Nosferatu. Okay, so next is one that I don't have in my possession. Two of the books on here, I don't have them. But I read them this year. First one is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And I liked her other, the one about the Mayan god and set in the 1920s, and the girl has to, I don't know, she's looking for this, she accidentally awakens a god, and she's looking for, like, his body or something, his mortal body, I don't remember, but I really enjoyed that, so I finally, I read Mexican Gothic by her this year. And I got it from the library, so I don't have a copy, and of course you guys know I don't know how to show an image on screen. But this is is a play on the whole Gothic stories, like Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, and Mysteries of Udolpho and all those types of stories, but in Mexico. And I think it's the 1950s. And our main character, Naomi, is her name? I want to say her name is. When I was practicing this, I couldn't remember, so I'm not even sure if Naomi's the correct. But I want to say that might be her name. She is of marrying her age, and her dad is pressuring her to get married because her cousin just got married. But her cousin actually sends her a mysterious letter, telling her that she feels unwelcome in her new husband's home, and his family is trying to kill her. So Naomi decides to, not only is she going to use this as an excuse to get out of getting married right then, but also to spend time with her cousin. And of course, like her cousin, she is not very welcome in this house. There's, like, people are a little suspicious. They're a little suspicious. I don't know why she's there. So you have a creepy house. You have a little bit of a science fiction element with the moss all over the place. They're known for the special moss. It's in everything. And with this one, you just don't know who to trust. And, like, Naomi is someone who's very much, she's a rebel, she's rebellious, and so they don't like that. They don't like how wild she is any more than her dad does. And so her character, she's kind of a fun character. Like, I like, you don't, in these gothic literature, I feel like most of the time the characters are very passive and innocent and easily controlled and very vulnerable. Um, but she's a little more feisty. She's got a little more bite to her, and she fights back. And not that those characters don't all the time. I mean, there are sometimes where they do fight back, but most of the time I feel like they don't. I mean, although I haven't read a lot of them, so but I like how she's a fighter and she's feisty and stuff. And I like that it takes place in Mexico, and that's the same reason I also like the Hacienda. Because I feel like I don't read a lot about Mexico. I don't read a lot of fiction that takes place in Mexico. Which that's my fault. I'm sure I can find it. So then we have, let me go ahead and talk about, because mostly what I say about Mexican Gothic is the same thing as the Hacienda, which I read more recently. And that one is by Isabella Canaz. I still don't know how to say her last name. And our main character, whose name I don't remember, her dad was murdered for being a traitor to Mexico at the time. I think it was during the Mexican Revolution. So as an adult, she and her mom are forced to live with relatives that aren't very welcoming, but they're still family. And they don't want they're not welcoming to someone who's the wife and daughter of a traitor, but they're still family. So they welcome in, and they're treated like second-class citizens, and they're like servants in their household. So when our main character is of legal marrying age, she decides she needs to find a rich guy so that her family, her and her mom, will have more money and security, and will be well taken care of. So she ends up marrying. She meets this one dude. Again, I'm sorry, I read it more recently, but I don't remember the character names that well. She marries this one dude, but it kind of creates a rift between her, some tension between her and her mother, because he supports the very thing her father stood against. Like he's on the opposite side of the war. But knowing they need money, the main character's like, I'm doing this, we need this. And she's then like Naomi, she's not very welcome in the household. She kind of has to compete with the sister who believes she deserves to own the house. She should be, let's say for the sake of argument, the heir. But of course, now that her brother has gotten married, that now his new wife will get the household and the inheritance. And there is a previous wife, and there's this whole belief that he might have killed her. So it's basically a retelling of Rebecca, which is the next book I'm going to talk about. Set in Mexico, though. And we also have a character that is trying to warn her and try to help her out, because she believes that the first wife is haunting the house. So it actually has a more supernatural element that Rebecca doesn't have. Rebecca is not actually supernatural, but this one does have a supernatural element to it, which I really like. I'm always a little disappointed when, I like reading those horror books, but at the same time, I'm always disappointed if it turns out, psych, there's no real supernatural element. The person's just crazy. I'm fine with everybody. Well, I'm not fine with it. I feel bad for the character when people think they're crazy. And I get very frustrated, and I'm that person who will yell at the screen and be like, you dumbass, they're not crazy. But I'm fine with that as long as there is actually a real supernatural element and not just, they really are crazy and they're imagining it. I like it when there's actually supernatural. And her only ally is this priest who is also a witch, which I like. I love that element too of this. I think it adds the story, and I like how we even have an exorcism in the story where he tries to banish the spirits. And it's like with Mexican Gothic, it's creepy. Although Mexican Gothic has a more science fiction element, this has a more of a ghost element. and it's creepy, it's fun. You got the haunted house in both stories. It's set in the country, I like, for me personally, I like that both stories are set in Mexico. You have a protagonist who's a stronger character, more of a fighter, but she's still terrified. You got characters that you just don't know who you can trust. Our main character just feels very unwelcome in this household, and in both cases, and you just, like, I think it adds the tension when you don't know who to trust in the story, who's on our main character's side. Both these books have that element, which, like, adds the scare factor. So next, let's go ahead and talk about Rebecca. We're on book 5. Like I said, the Hacienda is a retelling of Rebecca, where we have our main character who does not have a name in this case. And so it's not that I forgot her name, is she does not have a name. Which when I first read it, I was like, okay, did they ever say her name? Or I just missed it? But nope, she doesn't have a name. And she is a young adult and is working as a companion to this older lady, and they are visiting Monte Carlo at the time. And the older lady recognizes that there is this man named Mr. De Winter who was staying at the hotel. His wife had mysteriously died in a boating accident. There's all these rumors, but he's a very rich, charming guy, and everyone wants to be part of his social circle, including this lady. But she doesn't make the best impression on him. He's kind of annoyed by her, but he's a little charmed by our main character. He's intrigued by her, and when the old lady gets sick, he decides to spend some time with her and they hang out together, and they have a bit of a whirlwind romance, and she ends up falling madly in love with him. And but when the old lady gets better, she's like, okay, now it's time, we're ready to go home. I'm ready to go back to America. And so she, very upset, goes to Mr. De Winter and is like, oh my god, we're leaving, and I don't want to say goodbye because I really like you. She's fallen in love with him, and he all of a sudden offers to marry her. And she jumps at the chance, but of course the old lady kind of mocks it, and is a little like, yeah, honey, good luck with that. Like, she doesn't take it very seriously, but she lets, is like, okay, you do what you want, but, And so our main character, they have her and Maxim, that's his first name, have this beautiful whirlwind honeymoon. But then when she gets to his home, his estate, she's not sure if she's welcome there. And particularly by Miss Danvers, the housekeeper, who was obsessed, almost in love with Rebecca, his first wife. And everyone else is like constantly comparing our main character to Rebecca and saying how she would do this, how she feels, and what she would think of it. And slowly our main character kind of starts to lose herself and tries hard to become Rebecca, to live up to Rebecca's name. She's like obsessed with, thinking her husband Maxim is still in love with his wife, but there's also a possibility that he killed her. And Miss Danvers is constantly whispering in her ear, getting inside her head and messing with her. So, like those other two stories, there's characters you just cannot trust. Our main character is very vulnerable. It's this huge house. There's a creeping atmosphere that's very unsettling and unnerving. And there's a little bit of, there's a bit of we don't know if there's actual romance or not. If Maxim actually loves her or not, which I feel like you get a little bit of that vibe. But the other ones, although in both those other two, it's like you kind of know that they didn't marry them for love, unlike our main character who married Maxim because she fell in love with him. But at the same time, I think you still ask that question. You still ask that question of maybe the guy does love her or at least care, but maybe not. Our main character in all 3 of those books is very much alone. And it's really fun. It's very slow. Like, horror, I think I like horror when it's slow moving. Like, I don't like when it's fast paced. This is an older book, so the writing is a little different, but it's, at times. Oh, but it's just it's just so good. And it has been adapted multiple times now. I think it's been adapted like 3 times now, including this one, this next Netflix adaptation. But there's also one by can't think of his name. The famous director. He did The Birds, and Vertigo and Psycho. I cannot remember his name, but that director, he did his own version of Rebecca. And I think there was one more, but anyway, this is just so unsettling. So yeah. Okay, so next we have another classic, a little. And that is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This is the same guy who wrote Fahrenheit 451. And when I first got into this book, I did hear that I was hearing a lot that he was a great author to get into around this time of year because he writes really good autumnal books. So this one is about 2 boys that end up, a carnival comes to their town, and seeing if their names are. I don't remember. I can't see their names. Their names are not on the back. But these 2 boys, a carnival comes to their town, and these 2 boys, they're like 12 or 13, and it's this mysterious carnival that comes to their town, and it only in the night circus, I think it only opens at night. You have the ringmaster, who's very charming, and there's something off about him. And when people come to the carnival, he gives them what they most desire, what they think they desire, but there's a price tag to that. There's something, and he tries to lure the boys to the carnival, and one of them is very tempted, but the other one, our narrator, is not so sure about this carnival. So first of all, I love carnival stories because there's just something whimsical and mysterious, and like something about terrifying about a carnival, because you feel like you get lost in it, and it's so weird. It's like getting lost in in Wonderland, darker, more nonsense Wonderland, where it's fun at first, but then it becomes like terrifying. And also I like stories that explore the whole the idea of how there's always a price. Like you have this desire, but and it's something that you think you want, but then you get it and then realize maybe you don't want it because there's a cost to getting that thing, because nothing is free. Everything has a cost. Even like when you have to choose between doing this thing or reading this book or watching this show, there's the consequences for the thing that you didn't choose. And maybe it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it's still a consequence. It's still, if you chose to read this book, but you didn't read another book, the other book could be just as good, but you made a choice. You chose to read the other book. Or I like that whole concept, exploring that idea. And like I said, I love, and I don't know what else to say. This was really good. I do want to reread it, and I want to try to see the adaptation. I did try right after I finished the book, but it was kind of hard to find. It was not on Netflix or anything like that, so it was really kind of annoying, because I don't want to have to pay, a little bit of cash just to rent something, just to watch it, like possibly once. But Yeah, this is fun, and I want to read Ray Bradbury's other works. Like, there's October Country or something. I want to read that one. But, oh, so, Stephen King talks about this in Dance Book. But, yeah, so there's that. And then last but not least is a book that is inspired by a classic, but it was written recently. And that is Dracula. And I'm sure you can, going by the title, you can tell what it was inspired by. It is not a retelling, but an origin story of what inspired Bram Stoker. And it's really cool, there is actually an author's note, because the author, Dagger Stoker, one of the authors, is a descendant of Bram Stoker. He's like his great grandson or something. And this is the origin, so this is a fictionalized version of the origin of the Dracula novel. Like, according to the author's note, Bram Stoker told his agent that Dracula was based on fact. And it was a warning to people. But historically, other things were going on at the time. I cannot remember that his agent was like, no, you can't do that. You cannot make people believe that you cannot tell people this is real, that there are real vampires. Because that will create mass panic. So he had to take out some passages and pass it off as fiction. So I thought that was really cool. But, a young Bram Stoker, he had a nanny who took care of him. And there's one point where he and his siblings he and his little sister follow the nanny and see her doing some weird, very mysterious and weird stuff. And then Bram gets injured. And she uses blood to save him. So it is implied that his nanny might be a vampire. And she gets fired and sent away. So years later, when he's a little bit older, like close to adulthood, he decides to go find her with the help of his sister and brother. The reluctant help. And someone who was a Van Helsing type figure as well. And they are currently being hunted by someone who might be another vampire. It might even be Dracula. Again, it's a vampire story, so of course it's creepy. The vampire is always the shadow in the background looming over you. It was really cool to see a story about, Bram Stoker himself, even if it was fictionalized, or is it fiction? And it kind of is also written like the original story, like with journal entries. But it's a little bit, but I think it improves on some of the things that people, modern readers, might not like about the original Dracula. Some of the more tedious stuff. And then the sister plays a larger role and is very badass and not weak. And I also like that the nanny is a vampire. So it's like we have a potential female vampire in the story. I really like that as well. It was really fun and thrilling and creepy and mysterious. So I think if you enjoy vampires, I think check this out. I think you would really enjoy it and enjoy this take. Even if you didn't love Dracula, the original novel, you might still like this if you've at least read Dracula, because it's, like I said, it's an origin story of, Bram Stoker writing Dracula. What inspired him, though it is fiction. Or is it? So yes, that is Dracula by Bram Stoker and J.D. Barker. So those are my 7 dark and creepy reads for 7 on Sunday. What are some of your favorite dark, creepy reads? I would love to know. Share in the comments below. And I will talk to you all later. All right, bye.